Hi, so we're back home with the okra, and I decided to scan it to highlight the colors. If you haven't ever seen a scanned photograph, you'll definitely notice that the richness of the color is a distinctive part of it. Using a home scanner is the equivalent of buying a $2,000 new lens in terms of what it can do for certain items. It doesn't work on all items, but something like the okra works very well. So let's do the first scan, and I'm going to do the preview. And the preview doesn't have anything checked, and as you can see, it looks pretty dull. It's the middle of the day here, so I don't have a black room, so I had to put my black box over it. And all of that can be taken care of later, but in order to scan properly and you need that nice rich black, you'll have to create a box of your own or wait until nighttime. So I'm going to show you some of the adjustments that I make on every image. I never check any of these items. I always have 600 or I have 1200 DPI. Allows me freedom to crop an image so that it's printable at a large size. I don't like to foreclose any choices that I might want later on. I always do the reflective because if you've ever photographed old negatives or scanned old negatives or something like that, you would use the other setting. And then the professional mode, clearly. All right, so I want to show you the two adjustments that I do make on every image. And that is the histogram. And let me just get it so you can see it. And if you notice the preview scan, and I'm going to move this slider, and you can see it's getting darker, the colors are getting richer. Some of the dust and whatnot on the scanner is no longer visible. But the colors are also a little bit duller, so I'm going to just tweak it up a bit with these other arrows. These are the sorts of things that you make a subjective decision about, and you can play around with them. But it is something that I do on all of them. So I think that's going to be the first scan. And always use a TIFF file. And hopefully this won't take too long. It says, less than a minute. If it were a 1200 DPI file, it would take significantly longer. If you want to have and want to be a scanning photographer, you need patience. And I will not be able to do a tutorial on that. Okay, so for right now, I'm not going to look at this scan because I'm going to look at all of them because we're going to do multiple ones. That's the other thing that I recommend that you all do, and that is to at least 3. So here is the other adjustment that I use, the tone correction. And this is pretty straightforward. It lightens it, darkens it, flattens out contrast, heightens contrast, open shadow, user defined. And user defined are whatever settings you used on a previous scan. It will remain that way defined. In this case, I think I am going to go back to the darken, and that's very appealing to me. I think the colors and the richness stand out. It won't be the final image, but I think it's going to probably be my primary image to work on. So this will be the second scan. Now sometimes I do 3. I've even been known to do 4, but I think the 2 that I have now will be sufficient. And I'll show you the 2 of them once this is completed. Those of you who are familiar with Photoshop know that you can do a lot in Photoshop, that some of these scanner settings do for you, but I'm not presuming that all of you who are watching this tutorial are familiar with Photoshop, so I want to show you how you can do it with your scanner. Okay, so here are the 2 images. This is the darken one that we just did, and this is the very first scan that we did. And you can see I've got a lighter version and I've got a darker version, and for me this gives a good enough range for me to work with once I close the scanner out and go into Photoshop. So just to recap, a home scanner can be like a very expensive lens. You need to scan it in at a high DPI to give you the kind of clarity and size that will make a difference for your images. You need to take 2 at least, and maybe 3 or 4 images depending on those adjustments that are made. Use those adjustments in a custom way so that you feel comfortable. Play around with it. It'll make a great deal of difference to your resulting scan, and will save you time once you get into whatever photo software you might be using. So I hope you've learned a little something, and now I'm going to close this out and then go on to working on them in Photoshop.